All right. So it's been a while since I even had one of these, but of course we're live. So if right now it's myself and Christian Man, and we actually have a few topics lined up. I want to talk about prayer, speaking in tongues, why is the world the way it is, and any other topic that basically comes up. I guess we can start this bad boy off with prayer, and as the room starts to get filled up, we can go towards the other topics. But prayer, does it work? Do we have any data to support that prayer does work? And how can we make sense of prayer in light of the evidence with a more or less backdrop? So, like I say all the time, science answers the how, but we can philosophize and we can add our theology so we can explain the how. So, Christian man, what's your point of view?
On prayer. Can you expound on that at least a little bit?
Well, do you think prayer works? Has it worked in your life? And I guess what reasons would you give to a non-believer for why you think they should pray?
Prayer, I've heard examples of other people praying and things happening in my life. Like, for example, my mother, a story about her when she used to wear glasses and she prayed and she no longer wear glasses at that point. I have no examples in my life, at least, but not yet, not as of yet. And do I think prayer works? Probably. I have no reasons to not say no. So there's my answer.
I think prayer. I think I think prayer does work, but not in the way people are thinking about prayer, especially in our Western Americanized society. I think a lot of people think of God as a genie, and so when they pray to God, it's not necessarily a request, but as a demand. And so when people pray, they're not asking for God to do a certain thing in their life, but they're actually commanding Him to do a thing in their life. It's not God asking or answering um the request of His creation, but it's us humans trying to play God and basically have a genie in our pocket. And you actually see this in the Old Testament with the Tower of Babel. So
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people actually drew the actual theme of the Tower of Babel. If you notice today, a lot of people who may be younger creationists, or maybe some people may be flat earthers or into Illuminati conspiracy, you always hear that the reason why people were trying to make the Tower of Babel was because they were trying to reach heaven and dethrone God, which isn't the original context of the account. So, from an ancient Near Eastern perspective, real quick, the Tower of Babel actually is about a group of people coming together, building a temple, not so they can go to heaven and dethrone God, but they make this tower so that they can summon God whenever they want. Because in the ancient Near Eastern Old Testament perspective, if you wanted to worship a god, you would make a temple for that god. Um, a really good example is in the New Testament when Jesus is being configured, and Peter says, "Hey, Lord, should we make tabernacles for you, Elisha, and Moses?" I'm sorry, Elijah. And so people would make temples as an act of worship, and so what these people did in the Old Testament, you see in Genesis, is they made a tower or a temple, and God comes down because that and making this temple, they're summoning Yahweh, and God basically destroys the temple because, as we know in the Bible, God says that He doesn't dwell in a temple made by human hands. We don't worship a God that's inside of a statue or inside of a lamp or a God that's inside of like a TV or something like that. We worship a God that's omniscient, He's omnipresent, and He's unlimited. And so that's the context of the Tower of Babel story. And you can actually relate this back to prayer because not only do people want to have God and summon Him in their tower or in their temple whenever they want to, but people want that in all aspects of their lives, even when they pray. People want God to do what they want Him to do when they want Him to do it. And of course, we know the Bible says God works on His own time, which is funny because in heaven, there is no time. I disagree with Ken Hovind on a lot of things, but I like what he said. He said it's not the year 2017 in heaven right now. There is no time in heaven, which I agree with. There's no time in heaven. God is ageless. God is timeless, and God works on things when He wants to. Um, that being said, um, Americans think of prayer in the wrong way, in the simple sense that I don't think people necessarily comprehend what a miracle truly is. God does anything within the natural realm where God in our daily day to day, that would be a miracle. And whether God does that through natural processes or supernatural processes, nonetheless, if God interferes with the natural order of things, that will be a miracle. And in some cases, if somebody requested for God to do that, it would be an answered prayer. From my perspective, I believe that when God interferes with the natural world, number one, God never has broken or never will break the laws of physics until the end of time. Where, of course, in the new creation, in a new heaven and a new earth, there will be new laws of physics. And so, number one, God does not break the laws of nature. Number two, God has made a covenant with the laws of nature. If you go to Jeremiah 33, verse 25, God has promised that He won't break the laws of nature. And number three, through natural processes and not breaking the laws of physics, when God does do a miracle, these miracles are done by manipulations of very minute probabilities. And so a better way to understand this is the miracle, and I think it was Matthew, where Jesus tells Peter to go to the lake, and he says that when Peter casts out his fishing rod, the first fish that he pulled out would have a coin in its mouth. Now, it wasn't some supernatural thing where the fish popped out of basically existence from nowhere, right? Like the fish didn't come from nothing. The fish wasn't spontaneously created ex nihilo. Of course, we know there was a process. That fish existed probably for a good 10 or 15 years before Peter even got to the lake. And then on top of that, it took that fish time to swim from wherever it was at to get where it needed to be for Peter to reel it in. So the fish didn't pop into existence ex nihilo. It wasn't some supernatural event necessarily where the laws of physics were broken. You had a fishing rod, you had a fish, you had a coin, you had the laws of physics. Now, the miracle came in where the probability of Peter catching this fish was very, very low. But nonetheless, it happened anyway. And so when you think of a miracle or an answered prayer, you can think of even an answered prayer where somebody will ask God to keep them safe in their travels. And they could go through an event like a car accident or a life-changing, devastating event in their life where somebody else may have gotten hurt, but they came out of that situation with only a few scratches or not even a scratch at all. It wasn't some supernatural event where the laws of physics were broken, but the probability of that happening was very, very low and minute. And so you could say God had a role in that as well. So when you think about prayer and when you look at prayer and when you look at the data at prayer, where some people might argue that when it comes to prayer, it seems like it doesn't necessarily work 100% of the time. It seems like when prayer does work, it's a rarity, which if you take my definition of how miracles work and how God operates in the natural world, I think that's what you would expect. You wouldn't expect God to interfere in your life miraculously 24/7 all day long. Because if God did that, then it no longer would be a miracle. It no longer would be rare. And of course, we would have to take that into account when we're doing our physics, when we're doing our science. And that could be the case almost 100% of the time, or at least 99% of the time, wouldn't be the case. Because then you have God coming into the system and changing things around. And that makes naturalistic predictions impossible. And so I actually don't see a problem with the way God does do things when he does answer prayers and when he does do miracles, because like that, then we're actually able to make falsifiable predictions. So that's my view on it. I don't see a problem with God acting in the natural world on rare occasions. Less, I don't believe in a deist God where God is far away from his creation and he doesn't act at all. When God does act, it's a rare event, it's a naturalistic event, but nonetheless, he did interfere, and I'm happy with that. So that's my view on it. Christian, man, you can take it from here, I guess. I've been talking for at least like a good 15 minutes.
Oh, you're fine.
And if anybody wants to come in, I'm actually about to check the live chat right now. If somebody wants to come in, just say so. You can even give me some feedback. And do you agree with my view? Do you agree with my view to a certain degree? Do you think I'm just altogether wrong? What are your thoughts? Give me a minute as I check the live chat. Well, nobody really said anything in the live chat as of now. We do have some people watching. If some people want to come in, like I said, just say so. So yeah, that's my view on prayer. Don't really see a problem with it. As far as my next topic, which is speaking of tongues, I will get to that in just a minute. I have to do something real quick. So I guess you can say we're taking like a short intermission break. Somebody said I would join, but I missed half of what you said. Okay. So basically, I was just giving an apologetic for prayer. And so basically, in short, what I said was, I think it makes sense that we don't see prayers being answered on a daily, consistent basis. You don't see people 24/7 all day long. Every prayer that somebody prays, of course, answer. Very rarely do you see prayers answered in the same sense. In the Bible, you see God acting very rarely and swiftly. So you actually, if you would define a miracle as being a rare event, you wouldn't expect prayers to be answered every single time somebody asks for something or requested something from God. Because if God did interfere in the natural world 24/7 all day long, then it no longer would be a miracle. And even something like our sciences wouldn't even work because you have God coming into the natural world, interfering with things all the time. And so, that 99% prediction rate that we're able to make off of like the consistency of the laws of physics and laws of nature, we wouldn't be able to make falsifiable predictions because, of course, God is coming in and entering into the system, and things that usually don't happen on a daily basis happen all the time. I mean, let's say we had 30 people praying in the room right now, and they all had, let's say, 10 different prayers they all asked God. Well, you know, then you have a problem, right? Because these 30 people are getting their 10 prayers answered. And let's say, at least five of those has something to do with like, well, actually, all of those would actually have something to do with the law of nature because it would be dealing with probability. Uh, that's actually 300 prayer requests, right? They all had 10 prayers that they have. So that's 300 different prayers that God chooses to answer, right? All of those 300 prayers will basically what actually you could say in a sense defy mathematical probability. So therefore you wouldn't be able to make falsifiable predictions. This things that normally don't happen on a daily basis will then start to happen. Uh and it seems like God doesn't work like that. Where God doesn't work against his creation like a type of like deistic God, but he works with it. And so I think it's consistent with the laws of nature, to reality. And I also think that what we see in reference to how prayer works, I think is consistent with God's character. Um, what I said in a nutshell. I don't know if you're still here or not, Jacob. So yeah, you can take the mic. I'll be right back. Hey, Walhart, what's up? It's yeah. Do you hear my apologetic?
Yeah. No.
You all right?
Yeah, I'm fine.
I don't know if you heard my explanation or not, but I'll just talk about.
Only heard a little bit about the Tower of Babel. That was about it.
Yeah, okay. Well, I was just basically making clear that when people are talking about prayer and how come prayer doesn't work all the time and God doesn't answer every prayer, I think it's consistent with the laws of nature and consistent with God's character. Because if God were answering every prayer all the time, 24/7, things that normally don't occur would occur often, which would break the law of like mathematical probability. It would break the law of how we understand the laws of physics as they are today. Things that normally don't happen will start to happen all the time. And it seems like God doesn't do that. With God working with like natural laws and probability and stuff like that, God very rarely, um, very selective about when He does act. Um, so, you actually, in my view, I don't think you would expect God to act 24/7 all day long, and especially to every prayer. Um, So I think what we do see is consistent with God's character. He's not some distant God that's very far away, but at the same time, when he does act, it's miraculous, not because it's necessarily supernatural, but it's miraculous because it's rare. And so God, answer every single prayer all the time, because then it would be normal.
Mm-hmm. Well, the thing that I have a problem with on that is that I believe that, when we do pray, there's a chance God might not answer it, and God may. I think in regards to prayer, whatever we pray, if we pray right, we will get it answered. And this is what, because then we have scriptures such as 1 John 5, which talks about that if we ask anything according to his will, he hears us. And if we know that he hears us in whatever we ask, we know that we have the request that we have asked of him. Mark 11:24 saying, whatever you ask in prayer, believe that you've received it and it will be yours. And so, I mean, I think if we pray for something, we're going to receive an answer from God. It's just sometimes not going to be how we expect it to be. I think that's the key thing, because some people want to pray for $1 million or something like that, or pray for the healing of an amputee or something. But that's not how prayer works, because one thing that we need to pray for is if it be in the will of the Father, and for guidance, these kinds of things that will give a sign to help us in what's going on, because sometimes it may come through things we don't expect. Sometimes a thing like a car crash or something that you end up being in that doesn't kill anybody, but it just, wrecks the car. You end up meeting somebody as a result of it, and then this person in the future starts being someone who helps you cope with any problem you kind of go through. It's just things like that that can be unexpected, where what you might look for turns out to come just from anything out of the ordinary. And so I think that's the thing to keep in mind about the whole issue about prayer, is that God allows things to naturally occur, but he, of course, has things in plan and in motion to still go on with his plan, and as a result.
I like that.
Mm-hmm.
Also too, when you think about because when you talk about prayer, also another, what's the word? Another interconnected subject that goes well with prayer is the problem with evil, and how come God didn't answer the prayers if somebody was getting murdered, somebody was getting abused or something like that. And those are like good questions that really hit the heart. And William Lane Craig, he actually gave a good apologetic to this in regards to Molinism. If you think about it, like different timelines and stuff like that, I know people talk about like different worlds, but if you talk about like different timelines and what could have happened and should have happened, and et cetera, et cetera. His first point was bringing up that story, A Christmas Carol, with Scrooge, and he's like, Scrooge goes into the future and he goes to the past, and he didn't look at things that will happen, but he looked at things of what would have happened, right? What would have happened if he never changed. So it wasn't 100% that these things were going to happen, but if he did not change, this would be the case. And so in a lot of cases, if God did act in those, situations exactly when somebody went on to act, we don't know what would happen as a result. And then of course, like there are things like what definitely will happen. And so God knowing what would happen and also know what will happen, he uses that to his benefit. We're like, sure, there are terrible atrocities that are done every single day that were done, and these things are going to continue to happen until the end of time. But God is so wise, he uses all of these misfortunate events. Some people say for his purposes, because we have the second half of the book, right? We have Revelations and stuff like that. And so let's say you were able to go back in time and change, one thing from happening. You could basically put the whole timeline off balance. I mean, let's say you could change one thing from happening. You possibly could, stop Jesus from being crucified, which is a bad thing. We needed that to happen. Painful thing, right? Like it was a thing that it hurted Jesus and he was going through torture and etc. But it was one thing that needed to happen nonetheless. Let's say you could stop somebody from getting hit by a car tomorrow. You could stop the death of somebody who you really love. There could be a whole chain of events that you could have stopped from happening. And of course, like Back to the Future, right? You have like this alternate timeline of things that should have happened but never did happen because this thing happened. And so
Mhm.
I think God is so wise in His infinite wisdom, things that happen exactly the way they're supposed to happen, for good or for bad. And God uses these terrible things for the better good. And now we know what that better good is: a new heaven, a new earth, a new creation.
Mhm.
And so, yes, I'm not denying that, when God doesn't answer the prayers of somebody who's getting murdered or something like that, like, it's sad, but I also trust that God in His infinite wisdom, He'll use that person's death and He'll use, the abuse of somebody and etc. Um, for a better future, for the better good.
Mhm. Right. Here's how I take a look at it in comparison to what is stated there, as well as um, an actual issue that happened in my life. Um, the New Testament teaches that before creation even started, Jesus's crucifixion was ordained to happen. And this, I think, is a very interesting concept to understand that God has a plan for everything and that He uses these to bring about something. And as a Calvinist, this especially was an interesting way of seeing it when, even before then, I kind of knew something was going on. My brother was kind of distant from our family. And this is when we were in high school still, and he was very much into some of the phases. He was big, uh, Kid Cudi fan. Listening to all the rap stuff that was going on out there. He was pretty much trying to do his own thing, and he was very separate from a certain side of the family that I was spending more time with. And as a result, it was just difficult trying to, know about who my brother was from the perspective of my dad and a couple of others. And as a result, he just kept doing his things. But one day, one of his best friends that he ever had, and he still looks back at this and, this whole incident. One of his best friends ended up dying after overdosing on prescription drugs, and that was my brother's bestest friend that he ever had, and it ate him up about that. So we knew that at that point this was his most vulnerable stage that he was in. He tried to, go to some of his other friends, but it wasn't helping because this was the one guy that literally held him together while he was on his own. And he was gone. He was no longer in this world. So ever since then, after the funeral, which caused all of us to get together, he, finally started realizing he could actually come to his family in comfort, and especially in times that are about as tough as those. And he was a different person afterwards. He started changing his attitude a bit. Now he's making more money than me and my sister combined at the moment. He's really worked himself up in life. But at the same time, I think that God uses this kind of moment, that there isn't just simply that was just meaningless. That I think that there's always a purpose and a reason for things to happen. And with what happened here, it caused my brother to realize that he had to go back to his birth family, who he was pushing away and pushing aside. Because if he would have gone out and been separate from us completely, and this kind of stuff would have happened, it would have killed him. It would have destroyed him completely. And now he's very social with his family now. I mean, we were celebrating my grandpa's birthday, and he was wanting to at least do FaceTime since he's over in Texas right now on a job. So,
speaking about death and stuff like that, death and prayer, and like, why does God do what he does and all that stuff? There's a really good, what's the word I'm looking for? Antidote that William Lane Craig had basically told. And I know I keep on bringing him up, but it relates to Molinism and, like, you know, why did this happen, and, you know, how come God didn't do it this way? But long story short, Craig talks about how, let's suppose there was a family, right? A mother, a father, and they have two kids. They have a daughter and they have a son, right? And let's say, you know, the daughter was about to go to college one day, and as she packs up her things and she gets into a car and she's on her way to the university, she gets into a terrible car wreck. It's a travesty. She gets decapitated in the car wreck and she instantly dies. And it's a travesty for the family. The family mourns, of course, for a very long time, and it takes months, maybe even half a year, for people to just get back to normal and start getting into the routine of things, because she's gone and she died in such a horrible, crucial way. And the father, you know, and the mom, they ask God, like, God, why did this have to happen? Like, why our daughter? And, like, why the way she died? And, you know, how come on this day? But it could have happened where the daughter would have went to the university and she didn't die. But in her death, it actually brought the family together. It brought the mother together close to the father. It brought the father closer together to the mother. And the other child, it brought him closer together to his parents. And so there was a good thing that came out of the bad thing. Now, what would have happened if the daughter wouldn't have gotten into this wreck is would have gotten a divorce. And so the things that would have happened if she would have died never happened, because she didn't die. So then the family gets separated, the mother and father get divorced, and then the other child, they feel like they have to choose between either parent and they don't feel loved. And so there's another cycle of bad events, even though the daughter is still alive. And so there is this thing where God allows bad things to happen, not because he's the one who actually does the horrible bad things, but he lets these things play out, once again, for the greater good. And so a lot of people will say, well, that's such a bad thing. How come God couldn't let the daughter live or whatever? But there is this chain of reactions and different events that occur where we actually do this in Microsoft Excel. So there is a command where we have to use something called the if function, right? So let's say you go on the website and you want to buy like a pocketbook or something like that, or well, not you see, I'm not seeing you wear pocketbooks. If you do, I'm okay with that. But but let's say you want to buy something from the store, and there's a percentage you have to use. Long story short, there's a function we have to use in Excel called if. If the price of this handbag is etc., then this is, you know, what should change over here in this cell. You used Microsoft Excel before, right? See, maybe you didn't. Maybe I don't know. But we use the if function, and basically, in the same way those if functions work in Microsoft Excel, if A then B, if C then etc. It kind of is similar to the real choices that God has to make. And, like, I'm not taking away from the humanity of it all, but there is a logistics that have to be, I guess you could say, looked at from an outside perspective, where God isn't this from an emotional perspective, but God is playing universal chess. There's a bit of like divine strategy that needs to be put into these choices, and, you know, when God allows certain things to happen and people are dying and stuff like that. So I think that's a better way to look at it. Where if this happens, then as a reaction, something else would happen, or because you know what Mullen is a positive. God not only knows what will happen, but He knows what would happen. So in the case of prayer and tragedy, um, I know these things are like really hard to deal with, and I'm not taking away from like the pain of it, but you also have to consider if you could go back and change what did happen from happening, um, you possibly could make things worse. Let's say you could go back in time and you could stop somebody from
Mm-hmm.
dying, but in the same effect,
Mm-hmm.
right? Your family would be happy, but let's say somebody else died who you didn't know. You never met this person before. You didn't even know this person existed, but you, in saving somebody else's life, you killed that other person.
Mm-hmm.
And family is now hurt and devastated and going through a travesty, just like your family went through.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, there is like this real sense of either way, somebody was going to die. Either way, like something bad was going to happen. And unfortunately, it was your family. But how like selfish of us to want us to change like one thing from happening and like have our family member with our families. And like as an effect, let's say like, we could and like if we had the power to do this, if we could go back and save our family members and we had to like deal with the consequences and cause and effect, we could take somebody else's family member away from them. So I mean, it's a whole lot of things that we don't really take into consideration because we're thinking of it from an emotional perspective. But when you get into like the logistics of it all and the rationality of it, really all I can even say is at the end of the day, we really do have to trust God being this cosmic, omniscient, omnipresent person who's already seen the end from the beginning. So, you know, a lot of people say, there's a reason for why God did it and et cetera, et cetera. And we may find out in the here and now, right? But
Mm-hmm.
all I know is the reason why God allows all things to happen the way He does to that better good and revelations. And if things didn't happen the way they did happen, we might not be able to get to that end in Revelation. So things happen the way they do because that's how they're supposed to happen.
Mm.
Are you looking at cat videos? Yeah, all I hear is clicking.
No, that's the mouse. Then again, a cat, technically, I guess a cat would go for a mouse at this point. Just browsing the internet.
There's some weird places on the internet, like me and Christian were talking about like the Black Hebrew Israelite websites. Oh my goodness, these people are crazy. They need medicine.
That's for sure.
Christian, are you still there?
I'm about to get probably another gig at voice acting.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if you ever heard of the series called Ruby, RWBY.
No, never heard of it.
What?
Huh?
You get Ruby?
No, I never heard of it.
No, it's not going to be on the actual thing. We're doing a fan dub, or that these people are doing a fan dub of it, and so I'm probably going to be doing that. The roles I'm trying out for are Ozpin, Sun, Neptune, and possibly Jean. So those will be what I'm trying out for. And I can tell Christian Man already has a pretty good idea what those are.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
This is Christian.
I wish I would be on Ruby.
This is Christian Anarchist of Spiritually Honest Ministries.
Oh, you saw that video earlier, huh?
That was beautiful parody. I should be like, this is Christian Man of Christian Man Ministries.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if you're if Wayne knows about the whole controversy going on with White.
James White?
Yeah.
No.
Well, apparently, and I don't know why it took this long for people to actually start making a big deal out of it. He had a dialogue a while back in Memphis, Tennessee, with a Muslim named Yasser Qadi at a church. So they had like this dialogue where it was talking about Islam and what it teaches and what the different viewpoints were. To get an introduction of Islam, talked about at a church. And now a lot of people like Brendan Hauser and Usama Daktak, and for a little bit, even General, was like that James White was kind of being a softie, that he was kind of being like a compromiser of his faith, and that he was being like a ecumenical interfaith movement advocate or something, and that he doesn't know anything about Islam, all these kinds of things. And these claims are coming from people like Usama Daktak, and I don't think he's actually seen White actually do anything. Sam Shimon, who just person who is a little bit immature in the faith. Keith Thompson of Reformed Apologetics Ministries, who's been the guy I've been making the response videos of lately. And,
which are perfect parodies.
Yeah, pretty much. So about and just other people in general are like coming after saying that that James White's like a Muslim loving pedophile defending freak, or like it just gets out of control at this point.
Well, I actually did hear about that, and I don't really have a say in that. I mean, Islam isn't really my thing, but
But the thing is, you can have respect for people, and just because they're just offering their viewpoints in a church, which the whole goal was to get people to not just know about Islam, that way they can approach the topic more, but also know the people that they're dealing with as well, because some of the people that are living near them could be Muslims, and they shouldn't have to be afraid of what simply Fox News and CNN tells them. You know what I mean? Because they don't give you the full story. The CNN and MSNBC just gives you the liberal hippie side, and Fox News just wants to do the scare tactic approach on it. So.
Yeah, I don't know, but I was thinking about this earlier.
Mm-hmm.
You know how like ever since you become a Christian, you just start thinking about like Christianly stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I was just thinking about Bible verses, and one Bible verse that really sticks out to me that I really like is when Paul writes. He says, "If possible, live peacefully with all men."
Mm-hmm.
And if James White is trying to do that, then
that's what he's always emphasized.
Right. So I don't see a problem with him doing that. If that's his goal, I think it's a good goal to be a Christian. I mean, at one point in time, we couldn't live peacefully with all men because they were all trying to kill us. And now we live in a beautiful United States of America where we can go out and we can tell other people about our faith. They're lit on fire like candlesticks. We can evangelize the college students and not have to worry about getting locked up or whipped.
Mm-hmm.
So I think in such a time like today, to be able to talk about religion with somebody and then you can still be friends with them and you guys are still like different religions, I think that's awesome. I think that's an amazing thing.
I'm gonna light this candle. I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine.
Oh my gosh, this is not. That is not like.
Mm-mm. Like,
no, I wasn't joking about that, but
here's the thing. I think people, because some people do not want to be interested in studying the topic, and that's fine. I mean, when it comes to some people who have the time and all that and the resources to get this set out, then we're able to, do so. I mean, because some people want to get because it's always hard to find a Quran out there for some of them to get.
Yeah,
But
you know what? I was because there's a guy in my school who we're more or less like associates, and I asked him. I said, hey, like I would like to study Islam because I know like you're a Muslim, so like where would I actually get a Quran at, or like would I have to
mhm.
learn Arabic or anything? And at first,
they
he
they
didn't really know.
will always tell you that a English translation is not the Quran. It's someone's interpretation of it and of its meanings.
Well,
So
well, no,
that's why they always say that the Arabic is the Quran and only the Arabic contains the truth. It's that kind of.
well, he didn't say that, but he just pointed me to download, and that was about it. I'm not like
It pointed you to
really.
what?
He pointed me to like an app because you can download a Quran from the App Store if you have a smartphone.
Yeah, but mostly those are the Arabic, and that's what I was mentioning because I tried downloading like 10 different apps and just ended up being Arabic.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that. Well, I don't know then because
There is one though that you can get it for free, but technically the only part that would be anything involving money is the fact that you are mailing this to Saudi Arabia. It's simply like a request form to ask for a copy of the Quran in English, and the what's it called? The King Fahd uh, Quran
The King
printing
Fahd
complex.
complex.
Yeah, the King Fahd complex, which is practically like what you would call the Gideons in America. They are the Gideons of the Quran in Saudi Arabia and the entire world.
okay.
So their website simply says in order to get some of their published material, you just simply airmail them uh, and ask what you want, and then they'll hopefully send it to you. I haven't done this yet. Personally, for me, what I've done is that there's
I did, and I didn't get the Quran.
Huh?
I did. I did the whole order.
So you went through this whole step. What did you get then?
I didn't get anything.
How long has it been?
It's been like 2 months.
Oh man, then I don't know. Maybe they're still working on it. I mean, you got to imagine they might get a lot of material. But that's one thing. That's one way. Another way is
Actually no. Go ahead.
But another way is the Furqan bookstore, Furqaan, and these people have been releasing some Dawa material and all that stuff, and they've recently a Quran translation that they have along with some of the classics. They have this new one that came out in 2016 called the Clear Quran. The English only is $5 along with some tax. And they just recently released it with the Arabic and English side by side, which is $19.95 for soft cover, $24.95 for the hardcover. But the other thing is also the Maulana Wahidian Khan translation, and on his little website, and this was also how what's his name LC got his, is that we went to a Goodread what's it Good Word Books is what it was called, because I know there was a website called Goodread Book, but Good Word Books, which is a sort of Islamic bookstore that he's sort of founded. And not only could you order a free Quran from there, but you also can get like if you decide to get a small little tiny pocket-sized Quran from there, you get that's 65 cents. You want a medium size, then that's what almost $1. And and that's just for the English, of course. And then, of course, they have for 80 cents, you can get a copy of Abdullah Yusuf Ali's translation in English. And then for the Wahidi and Khan translation, I'm trying to see if they still sells it. Yes, for the Wahidi and Khan translation with the Arabic, the English, and commentary is $6.10. So, and that's a pretty good deal to get, considering all that material that would be involved in there. So there's 3 places where people can try to get a Quran at.
I think I'll have to take. As a matter of fact, just when you get a moment, just message me the information, because I definitely do. I want to. There's so many things I want to do, but because I'm in school right now, so I guess, like towards like fall, that's when I'll more likely more or less be free to look into this stuff. I wanted to get into the Quran. I wanted to learn different languages and stuff. Like, there's a lot of things I wanted to do. But I think Christians definitely should like look at other religions. Like, you should at least be somewhat educated on what other views teach. Saying that you should convert to those other faiths or whatever. But it's good to know. I mean, how would you feel if you were talking to somebody who was like a really big advocate of, let's say, I don't know, Buddhism, right? And they didn't do their due diligence to look at any other faith besides Buddhism. You would think this person is, a little cognitive with other beliefs. So, and also too, like Christians, of course, like we don't have anything to fear when it comes to looking into other religions and stuff like that. And you could even not be a Christian, right? You can look at other views. It's just nice to be well versed,
Absolutely.
Speaking of which, I guess I'll end the hangout with this topic, because I want to talk about speaking in tongues, which I think everybody knows my view on speaking in tongues. I'm a cessationist, and that's all I can even say on that. What about you, Cia?
I take a different view.
I mean, I think it's the speaking in tongues is still a thing, but only in the context of which it should be applied, which is that speaking in tongues for today can happen in 2 ways. One, if it's what they would dub as the angelic language, but that's only between the person and God. So it's not to be some kind of attention kind of thing or any of that, or trying to force a prophecy on it. It means simply that the person was praying to God in that tongue, and that the emotions and the Holy Spirit overwhelmed them with it. Then the second point is the edification of the church, which Paul talks about. And simply, and this was what my pastor was talking about once, is that, speaking in tongues, the word tongue in the Greek there simply just means another language. And then he starts speaking German, Tast, and all that kind of stuff. And he said that would be considered a tongue. And I'm speaking another tongue. Or he says speaking another tongue. And so some people have the gift of interpretation, that they are able to interpret the said tongue that is speaking at that moment. And God only reveals in these cases someone to speak in tongues only if there is someone who is able to interpret in there. If someone spoke in tongues and that there is no interpreter in the room, then it's not of God. That's the one pattern that is noted, is that when there's a person speaking in tongues, there always is an interpreter. Otherwise, then it's just a waste, because then why would God just send a message that no one can understand if it can't even be interpreted or understood? That's when you get the hysterical type of ideas that you get in certain people in the Pentecostal movement these days, is that they're taking this and they're thinking, okay, you know what? I think what we're seeing here is just absolutely new language that we've never heard before, even though it's just someone who's ignorant of other languages. It just sounds new to them, but they haven't learned this kind of stuff about it's actually another language that someone may have been speaking because of the Holy Spirit that's given them this message through there. So it's that kind of thing that's interesting, and because they always go back to the story of Acts when they spoke in tongues when they were filled with the Holy Spirit, but they spoke tongue because people around them were then in their own language were able to hear the gospel. So it showed the diversity of the gospel's range, that it doesn't just go to the Israelites, it went to all different kinds of Gentiles of different languages and different tongues. So I think that's the one thing we need to take into consideration.
I like that view. I don't really have any objections towards it. It fits nicely with cessationism. Are you a cessationist or are you more charismatic?
I'm partial cessationist for the matter.
Okay, I can dig it. I can dig it. But yeah, I like it. Christian, man, what's your view?
Partial as well. I can't necessarily deny I can't necessarily deny nor confirm anything outside, but as far as the thing in Acts, it ceased. The tongue ceased at that time.
Yeah. Well, I'm a strict cessationist.
You on that?
I'm just I just don't believe that there's enough evidence to prove that such a thing as an angelic language exists. I definitely do believe in angels, but as far as being able to provide evidence that the tongues of today are a legitimate divine language, I don't think the evidence is sufficient enough for certain reasons. One being that there are a number of different linguistics, I didn't pronounce that right, linguistics, who have studied the phenomena of speaking in tongues, and they have concluded that there isn't a phonetic pattern in these phrases that these people are using. So therefore, there isn't a language that they're referencing. Um, then also with that being said, there have been some different neurological tests, and they have come back that these people are not speaking an actual language. Um, I Nobody else on the planet speaks this language besides these people speaking this supposed language. So it can't really be verified because there are another people group who say, "Hey, I speak this language too, and I know this person speaks this language as well because I'm fluent in it." So you really can't falsify it. Um, you can demonstrate that these people are not speaking a language. They very well could be, but all of the evidence suggests that there isn't at least a pattern in it. In the same sense, like there's a phonetic pattern in English and Spanish and etc. What you would expect to see if it were a real language, you don't see that in the charismatic movement speaking in tongues. So therefore, I would say that I don't have a reason to believe that it is a real language. So it's lacking evidence. It very well could be the case, but I just don't think the evidence is sufficient enough.
Mhm.
And until I get the evidence, then I remain skeptical.
Mhm.
And that's just my view. So
Yeah, I don't believe the Pentecostal view either. Speaking in tongues.
what you say?
I don't believe the Pentecostal view is speaking in tongues.
It sounds like you're far away from your
Yeah,
mic.
like you sound. Oh my God.
You there?
Can you guys hear me now?
Oh.
Sorry.
Somewhat.
Yep, I hear you.
I do not agree with the Pentecostal view of speaking of tongues.
Right.
Oh, okay.
I agree.
So
I agree. I believe the view of the interpretation of interpreting other language views.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, I would agree too. So, but I'm actually about to go to bed, guys. It's kind of late. It's been a good hangout. We actually touched on two topics that I wanted to talk about. I guess we can touch on the last one whenever. But it's been good talking with you guys, good fellowshipping with you guys, and I
Mhm.
this isn't this it hasn't been one of those hangouts where we've been in here for like 8 hours and stuff. Like, I'll try and keep these hangouts relatively short, maybe like
Mhm.
an hour and a half. But I'm going to sleep now, guys. I'm done.
Okay.
I'm tired. But until next time, good luck and
Night,
good
Wayne.
night. CA. What the heck?